The ghosting is just unreal to me. You could have a full interview with a company. You could even be a referral, do a full interview in person, hours long, and then get ghosted. And it's crazy to me that that's being done.
All right, Sophie, welcome to Money Bites.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Amazing. One of the questions that I love to start out with is, given Winnie being Winnie, and we're empowering women in tech to take ownership of their financials, what is your first memory of money?
My first memory of money. Well, I didn't grow up in, an upper class household. It was more, kind of mid to lower. Growing up, I didn't really see money for, I didn't go on these extravagant vacations and whatnot. And I grew up in an area in San Diego that was pretty wealthy. So I did notice kind of a little bit like, I can't do these things. My friends are doing them, things like that. I didn't really understand it until I got a little bit older, went to college, and then even after college, where it's very simple things where it's like, I didn't really eat sushi until college and things like this, where, I got like a, side job along with going to school and kind of making my own money from there and being able to have these experiences with food and travel and whatnot. And so looking back on it, as a child, I didn't really see money as a thing, but I knew it was a way to kind of get more experiences and just like make your life a bit richer. No pun intended. But yeah, I mean, that's really kind of my first memory, I guess, of it. Or I guess the difference of whether you have a lot or a little.
Do you think that has impacted your current relationship with money or how you've made any career choices?
Definitely. I think right out of college, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to make money and have enough, to not live paycheck to paycheck. And so the way that I saw for that was to go into sales, like mostly. And then I got into a job that was recruiting and sales. And I really liked the recruiting aspect. And, recruiting actually pays pretty well. At an agency, you get a commission along with your base. And then at in-house, you usually get, a base salary, stock, and whatnot. So yeah, I mean, it was a good path to choose. For sure. And I think the decisions I've made in terms of my next moves, career choice, whatnot, definitely has been, will I make more money? Will this kind of further progress my career, whatnot? So that's definitely been on my mind.
Love it. We always love when women advocate for themselves. One thing that is interesting, though, you've had quite a bit of jump early on in your career. So from academia to sales to recruiting. Well, in both sales and recruitment, as you said, is somewhat commission-based.
Mm-hmm.
What sort of lean in favor of recruiting? What was it about recruiting that made it more fun?
Yeah. So sales in some sense is a bit more transactional. You're trying to close a deal, right? And then you move on and try to close the next one and whatnot. So that one felt a bit transactional, which is great. I mean, if you like moving fast, if you like wins, like closing things, that's great. For me, I always wanted to work, I always wanted a career where I'm helping people. And so that used to be like, okay, maybe I'll be a therapist, but then, I decided not to do that. And then I'm like, maybe I'll be a lawyer. And then that one also, I just didn't want to go that path. And so when I got into recruiting, it felt like it was a way to kind of bring along that passion to help people. And so that's why I went that path. Sales is also a great career. I many times, was trying to decide, should I jump to sales? Should I stay with recruiting? But in the end of the day, they're very similar. For me, it was just, I wanted to work more directly with other humans.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Can you share when you enter recruiting, what's a expected salary range that you might be able to look at?
Yeah, so it depends. If you're going the agency route, you'll definitely have a lower base salary. I think when I started, it was around 36,000 right out of college. That was, first job. That was very entry level. And then there was a commission piece to that, right? And so commission could be anywhere from 15% to 30% of a candidate's first year salary. So wow. Yeah, it depends, right? So if you place someone that is, $150,000 a year, anywhere from 15 to 30% of that would be your commission takeaway. But it's slightly different when you work at larger agencies, because then that piece, you get a percentage of that commission, right? Because then it's spread out among the team and the company. So it kind of depends. So yeah, agency wise, it's definitely lower salary. If you go in-house for your first job within recruiting, it's probably either a sourcing role or a recruiting coordinator role is typically what I've seen with in-house. It's kind of where you start. That could be anywhere from 60,000 to maybe 75 on the higher end, but depends. So kind of depends where you go. But I would say, yeah, like 50 to 60,000.
And you get no commission then?
Not when you're in-house. No, that's very not like that's very uncommon. I've heard some companies that are very sales focused will offer their recruiters some type of commission structure, but I haven't really seen that. Like maybe like 1 in 200 or maybe more. Like it's very, very rare.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And once you go to like, say, director level or above, what does that cap look like?
Great question. Within recruitment, anywhere from 180,000 plus.
As base?
Yeah,
Or
180.
okay.
170 base and above. But there's always the option of equity, which adds on to that. So sometimes people want to lean more heavily into equity and have a lower base, or sometimes it's the other way around. They want a higher base, they will take less equity. So it depends on the person, but that's typically what I've seen.
And you've sort of had the gamut of experience, right? You correct me if I'm wrong, but you started off with agency, then you went in-house,
Right.
and now you've broken out on your own.
Yep. Yeah. It's been a journey.
Quite a bit.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, working in-house is like you're part of a team typically, unless you go very early stage, but you're part of a team, there's some type of processes in place for the most part. So it's like, you know what you got to do, right? At an agency, same thing. It's like heavy training. I feel like you get less of an opportunity to kind of learn the full spectrum of recruiting at agencies, because you're mostly like focused on generating business and closing the candidate. What I liked about in-house is that you can build a relationship with the hiring manager much more, like, you have more time with them. You're more invested in each other because you're part of that company. You're able to build that relationship with the hiring manager and be much more closer with them versus like I mentioned, more of a transactional relationship.
Mm-hmm. What would you say are some of the pros and cons from being in-house versus striking it out on your own?
I'm not going to lie. It is not easy. It is not easy trying to do your own thing. Some days I am super stressed. Other days I have a lot of hope, but it's tough. Like you're doing everything on your own. You really have to take initiative to reach out to people that have done something like this before, or get, mentors that can kind of guide you through it. But you don't have someone to like ask like above you or anything. So for me, it was like, how do I make this legit? Like I, set up an LLC, reach out, get cold outreach to different clients, try to get some clients to work with. And so it was tough. And, some of the clients you work with, you have, it could be 5 different companies you're working with. And then all of a sudden 4 of them want to put everything on hold because the market's funky right now. Right. So it's a lot of ups and downs. And so it's like, you're constantly having to do the lead generation in terms of like trying to find new clients and all of that. And then also managing candidates that you speak with along that way to make sure, if you start working on a product manager role, like, oh, I just spoke with a product manager 2 months ago, who'd be great. So it's managing kind of both sides of that, and doing it on your own is a lot, but you learn a lot. So I do kind of sometimes miss being, with a team and having that extra support, but it's a good learning experience.
What does having your own recruiting practice mean? In terms of in-house, you're recruiting for that company. As part of an agency, you have a clientele. As a solo practitioner, are you also having a roster of companies that you work with?
Yes. Yeah. So I have some companies that I'm actively working with. I have some founders that I've had conversations with that just aren't ready for HR recruiting support, but further along down the road. So that one's kind of a longer game. But there's there's like three different, I guess, clients in my mind. There's the ones that are the longer game that aren't ready yet, but eventually will partner. There's ones that I'm working with right now actively. And then there's there's the cold outreach, right? So people that I don't know that just need some extra help. So yeah, there's a few different.
Amazing. What sort of nudged you or pushed you over to become a entrepreneur?
Yeah, great question. Like many people, I was part of a layoff at the end of last year. It hurt, but it kind of silver lining was that many of us are in this same boat, whether that's silver lining or not. But the way I saw that was this is time for me to just take a step back and just like look at, what do I want to do? Do I want to work in a startup? Do I want to work with startups? Do I want to go back to an agency? What do I want to do? And then while figuring that out, I started talking with people in my network, people that I knew had founded their own startups, things like that. So as I started talking with these people, they asked me, if you have bandwidth, would love some support, would love some help. And so it got to the point where there was enough, I guess, demand where I said, okay, let's just do that. Let's try this. Let's make this legit, make a legit business from this and work with these companies that I'm already talking with, and then just kind of run with it. So kind of just, I took it day by day, and I then realized like there is a gap here. Like a lot of startups, early stage, are still hiring, even though larger companies are doing layoffs. There's still companies that are hiring. They just don't need like full-time HR recruiting support just yet. So it seemed like a good thing to do while this market is like this. And I'm like, if this does well, I'll run with it. But if not, then I'm learning, I'm keeping everything fresh, and I'm learning kind of how this goes.
I love the fact that you sort of vetted the market, saw an opportunity, and are going for it.
Thank you.
As you alluded, there's quite a few folks who've been impacted across the tech sector specifically, and it has been a really rough market. From a recruiter's perspective, when there is so much supply and so much competition, any advice in terms of how to make your candidacy stand out?
Yeah, I mean, right now is tough. In the end of the day, there's a lot of ways you can stand out. A main one right now is like who you know. That's kind of how it goes a lot of the time. It's like, who do you know? Are you networking with the right people? Typically, warm leads are easiest, especially right now when, like, for a recruiter right now, there's lots of super talented recruiters on the market, and there's not that many roles, right? So if you're applying to these roles, even if you're sending an email to the hiring manager, like that could go unanswered. So you got to find out, like, do you know anyone at that company? Do you know anyone that knows anyone at that company? Is there a creative way you can make your resume stand out? Things like that. I think I saw something once of somebody for Pinterest. This was like years ago, but they made their full, I think it was Pinterest. It was some company like that, but they tailored their resume to look like a Pinterest page or, something like that. So something creative like that. You don't need to be a designer or whatnot, but, maybe something like that to just grab attention. But yeah, I would say like network and have no shame and just like sending that cold email even, and like, name drop anyone, things like that. So I think that's a good way to hopefully get in. But right now is a bit more difficult than usual for at least talent acquisition and HR folks.
I've always wondered, from an HR recruitment perspective, have you seen etiquette no-nos that send flags?
Oh yeah, many. The ghosting is just unreal to me. You could have a full interview with a company. You could even be a referral, do a full interview in person, hours long, and then get ghosted. And it's crazy to me that that's being done. I think it says a lot about the recruiter and the organization that allows that to happen. So I would say that's the number one thing. It's like, you just got to keep your candidates in the know and just update them. Even if you don't have an update, or even if you want to reject them, just let them know, we're all adults. We don't need to be ghosting each other. Giving feedback is difficult for some people, but this is what being, in this role is. And you have to put yourself in these people's shoes, and like, interviewing sucks. Like I know it sucks. And being on the other end when you interview and you're really excited, and then like even a day goes by, you're like super anxious to hear back. And if that day turns into a week and you don't get any feedback, then it's like driving you crazy, right? So even if there's no feedback to give, you should always check in with your candidate and let them know as soon as possible, what the status is of that. So that's the number one thing I'm seeing right now is the ghosting and just like not updating, no communicating.
If you can evangelize that to your fellows in the industry, that would be amazing.
I know. I wish I could just, scream it out and everything. It's something that's happening right now and I recognize it. And, it's really unfortunate that it's happening.
Do you also see etiquette no-nos from the candidate side?
Yes, I think it's good to be honest when you're interviewing, but I think with people working from home so much, there's this casualness that people have kind of gotten used to. And I think being casual is fine. Like I'm very, very much so casual for the most part, but I think when you're interviewing, you still have to impress, you still have to come off knowledgeable and professional and, not just kind of blah. So I think like watching what you say, coming off as put together, buttoned up a bit, I think is super helpful. And, I'll leave it at that, but there's no-nos on both sides. So
PJs, even for VCs, are not a good idea.
Professional on top, you could wear, you can wear your sweatpants on the bottom as long as the camera's not there. But you gotta be prepared. You gotta be professional about it. And yeah.
When you are working with startups, I'm curious, when do you think it is a good time, or when do you think startups are ready to start working with a recruiter?
When they get funding. Or when they announce funding. They announce funding. So typically when companies announce funding, they've already gotten that funding like months before. So they're usually actively hiring for probably engineering for the most part. Engineering, design, product are kind of the top ones. Some operations roles I've seen, but like knowing which startups to reach out to, I check like who just recently announced funding. And then I'll reach out to them because it's usually small startups, right? So they don't have an HR team. They might be working with like another agency, but that's really what I look for.
And is that usually in the form of like retainer/commission?
Yeah, so it depends. If it's a more specialized search, I typically push for a retainer because I'm going to spend more time on sourcing candidates, screening them, whatnot. But if it's a more generalized role, where my network is probably pretty full of that, like product design or engineering, like a front-end engineer, typically that's commission. That will be a commission-based one.
One thing that I can commiserate as a founder is finding the right people is super hard.
Yes.
It's I have to say harder than almost building the actual product.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's tough. You never really, if you don't know that person beforehand, or if you don't know someone that knows them that can vouch for them, it's tough to kind of decide whether this person's great for that job in like a 30-minute to an hour conversation. It's a little tough, but sometimes you just got to take that risk and it pays off. Sometimes it doesn't, but hopefully it does.
Have you worked with product teams that are there things that certain product teams prepare that makes your job easier to find a really good candidate? Like what should be either a checklist or something that the client can do in advance for clients, so people who want to hire folks?
So what do I need from them type thing? Okay. Yeah. What I need from them is budget. What's the budget for the role? Is there going to be equity? Like what levers can I work with the candidate, right? Job description. So a list of what they're looking for. If they don't have a job description yet, I work with them on figuring out what does this person need, what qualities, what characteristics, what requirements. And so putting together a job description. And then generally I like to just spend some time with the team, with the co-founder and whomever, whether that's in person or over Zoom, to just understand their general kind of the way they work, their personality, just their overall vibe. Because then you need to find candidates that will work well with that, right? So if it's a really loud social team, you want diversity, but I think if it's a small 5-person team and every single person is like super social and all the time wants to go out, I think getting someone that is very reserved and like keeps to themselves at that small of a team, it's going to be tough.
Mhm.
So I think finding people that mesh well together, especially if it's a smaller team, because you're trying to build something with with a tiny group of people, you're going to spend a lot of time with them. So yeah.
Personality or rather cultural fit. Yeah, definitely important.
Yeah. We typically like to say culture add. Culture fit. Some companies I've worked with, we try to stray away from using that term just because it comes off as a little biased, but like culture adds, like you're adding to the culture with people, and everyone can offer something a bit different.
Gotcha. I want to go back to the job description, etc. Though, like often when you're going through JDs in vacancy postings, either they seem super specific or they seem very generic. So I'm wondering, like, what might be something that would attract really good candidates or make your life easier?
To attract candidates.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think always like having them send a few profiles that, of people they know, or, types of people they would want to hire, and then tailoring my search based on that. Right. So that's a good starting point. Yeah. So it's like, if you're looking for a machine learning engineer with specific like personalization experience, working on recommendations, whatnot, I'm going to want to see a couple profiles of people they may know, or people they're trying to get in process of what's the ideal profile you're looking for, and then tailor my search based on their ideal kind of set of qualifications.
That's a great advice. Follow up on that. How much does the recruiter need to understand in terms of sort of business models, in terms of the technology, etc., to find good matches?
Yeah, you need to know everything. If you can't describe what like this person's actually going to be working on in the terms of like the whole company, they're not going to be able to picture themselves doing that, right? So for me, I'm very visual. So when I first start working on roles, I like to sit down and I'm like, okay, what exactly is this person going to be working on, like within the whole product, right? Is it building this financial model? Is it, what exactly is it? And how do they fit into it? Like, for an engineer, what exactly are they going to be working on? And then, translating that into layman's terms and describing it. So again, I'm very visual. And so I'm not an engineer. So I think being able to have them explain it to me and like step by step, this is exactly where it fits in. I think that works pretty well for me, at least. So you want to know everything. So in case the candidate asks you, you're able to accurately describe it. And then if you don't know, then, say, great question. I will get back to you on this very shortly. So yeah.
Honesty is the best policy.
Yeah, exactly. Don't make something up if you don't know the answer.
Sounds good. The last question that I'd like to ask is, you're going through quite the adventure yourself. What would you say is your current top money aspirations / concerns?
So concerns is not what I'm doing is not, there's not a consistent pay. I'm not getting I'm not on a salary, right? I don't get a paycheck every 2 weeks. So for me, that's a little stressful, right? If that's where the sales piece comes in, where it's like, if I don't generate business and close, then I'm not going to get money, right? Unless it's on a retainer. So that's a little stressful, right? Not having something that's consistent. But yeah, wait, what was the other part of your question?
Money aspirations.
Okay, yes. I would like to make enough money to afford a house, to have a dog, maybe two. I think our generation, it's pretty difficult just with inflation and everything, and having, I think the simple things that people used to kind of not take for granted, but it was a bit easier to achieve, I think are now people's like dreams. Like I mentioned, owning a home, having, stability to travel and whatnot. And so for me, that's the big driver. I'm also a big foodie, so I like to spend money on good meals and experiences. So that's what drives me, really. I'm not very like clothing, purse, whatever motivated. It's more about experiences for me. So, they say money doesn't bring happiness, but it does buy you flights and meals, and it brings you some happiness in some ways. So that's what drives me, really.
Love it. Money does buy experiences. I love that.
It's true.
Where can folks find you?
Yes. So my LinkedIn, Sophie Edelman. That's the phonetic way. It's actually pronounced Edelman. And I don't have a Twitter, but you can email me, sophie-edelman.com. I also have a website, sophie-edelman.com. And yeah, that's pretty much the best place to reach me.
Love it. Thanks for your time.
Of course. Thank you.